What is up, health enthusiasts? It's Coach Lamby here for Working Weights LLC, your guide to strength, health, and all things nutrition. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Dwayne Ulrich, aka Poppy Dwirl. And today we are doing part 103 of our Nutrition Basics course. All right, Dwayne, ready to go?
I'm ready to go, man. Let's jump into it. Some really exciting stuff. Loving it, man. Hoping to look at some cool mind maps today too.
Yeah.
Boom! There it is.
Awesome. Here's our mind map. I think this will finish it up for our basics here.
Excellent.
Today. So, what we're talking about, last week we talked about calories and macros, how to create a calorie deficit, how to figure out your macronutrient needs depending on your goals. So today we're going to talk about our micronutrient intake and nutrition periodization, which is kind of the plan on long-term success, right? Continuing to get you towards your goal with a sustainable approach. So let's dive into the micronutrients here for a second, because I know some people certainly do worry about this, particularly as they start reducing calories, tend to get concerned about making sure they're getting all their vitamins and minerals and whatnot. So going into how these how they figure out how much of these things you need. Okay, we're looking at what's called the RDA and the RDI, recommended daily allowance, and the recommended daily intake. And just like our BMR and RMR, those are two different things. For basic purposes, we can think about them as being the same thing and being interchangeable. Okay. And so you'll find your RDI generally, so you're not really going to see the specific number anywhere, but on the nutrition labels, when you're looking at a package and it'll say calcium, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin C, all that stuff, and it'll have a percentage, and then along that percentage column will say daily value, and that represents the percent of daily value. That's generally how people are going to know what their RDI is or what their RDA is. Now, how are those things established, right? So the RDA is the average dietary intake. Move this over. The average dietary intake level sufficient to meet the nutrient requirements for 97 to 98% of healthy individuals within a specific life stage or gender. So just like our protein and our amino acid requirements, remember our RDA for protein was 50 grams, and a lot of people think that that's the bare minimum, but it's not, right? It's actually 2 standard deviations above that. Well, the same thing for all of our micronutrients on how they figure out these RDAs. So they figure out how much of specific vitamin, mineral, all of them actually. Well, maybe not all of them, but how much of all of those things within the food source are digested, are absorbed, and generally tend to keep the population level healthy, right? And then they'll go 2 standard deviations above that so that we're covering 97 and 98%. And now you will have those outliers on both ends, people who are going to need more than that, and then people who are going to need less than that. But for the vast majority of the population, that's what those numbers are. Now, our protein numbers on the package, we know that protein gram amount that they give you and the percentage is the corrected for score. Okay. Mm-hmm. But for our vitamins and our minerals and our fats and macronutrients and stuff like that, those numbers that you get on the package are not the corrected for scores. However, the daily value, the RDA, is the corrected score. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does to me.
Okay. Yeah, so it's kind of different. It's weird how they have different things for everything, but just know that when you're looking at the nutrition label, and you're trying to figure up your daily needs or whatever, all you need to look at is that nutrition label. And if something says it's 25% of your daily value, you can be rest assured that by consuming that amount, you are getting 25% of your daily needs. Okay. RDAs are established by estimating the average physiological requirement for an absorbed nutrient. The final value is adjusted to compensate digestibility, absorption, and utilization. Okay. So the RDA, the RDI, that daily value percent that you're seeing in that column and on off to the right on the nutrition label, that is compensated for by digestibility and bioavailability and absorption and all that stuff. All right. So just, you know, you don't have to worry about where you're getting your calcium from. So long as you're getting, you know, enough of it and you're meeting the RDI, you'll be perfectly fine. So that's the RDA. Okay. The RDI is used in the food labeling. It's based on the RDA. So again, we can think about those things as just being interchangeable. Now, you do not have to try to meet these RDI requirements on a daily basis. Okay, so what we're looking for are averages over time. So just because you didn't get all of your calcium in today doesn't mean that by, you know, just consuming a little more of something that has calcium in it, you know, tomorrow, is going to affect you negatively. So we're looking at averages over time. So these things are not meant to be met on a per day basis. You don't have to go out and try to figure out the perfect diet so that you're getting all of your vitamins and minerals on a daily basis. You don't need to worry about that. Just getting it over time. Okay.
Are
We
the
have one
are
more.
the are the RDAs and RDIs, is all that calculated on not having to do that daily? I
Yes.
mean, okay.
Yeah, so it's an average. So what they do is they try to establish, so up here that it's established by estimating the average physiological requirement for absorbed nutrients. So that number, they're saying this is the recommended daily intake. That is an average number. It's not the exact amount that you have to get on a daily basis. Otherwise, you're going to develop scurvy, right? It's
Right.
an average. That's so they take it and they say over a course of time, over 6 months or a year or whatever, you know, in order to be healthy and maintain optimal physiological levels, you need this much. And so we average that out to a daily basis, and that comes out to this much on a daily basis.
Huh. That's really interesting to me because I kind of feel like sometimes daily multivitamins and daily
Mm,
vitamin supplements are kind of sold on that basis that people think that, oh my gosh, I've got to get all these things in a day and per day.
yeah, that's a good question. I get asked a lot about multivitamins. And so my understanding of the multivitamins, um, for the average healthy individual, even if you are on a diet, um, multivitamins can improve nutrient can improve serum nutrient status. Okay, so if we were to draw your blood or take a
Right,
biopsy of tissue or whatever,
right.
multivitamins can improve the nutritional status for vitamins, but not so much for the minerals. So iron, copper,
Ah,
calcium, stuff like that. And we have
ah,
lots and lots of trials regarding elderly people and supplementation of calcium to see if that helps preventing bone fractures and stuff like hip fractures. It doesn't do anything. Supplementing with iron doesn't really tend to prevent anemia or um, help it in any way. But as far as vitamins go, particularly vitamin D and B12 and like ascorbic acid, vitamin C, all of the vitamins, you can improve nutrient status by taking a vitamin. Outside
huh.
of vitamin D and B12 and C in certain cases, for healthy individuals, taking a multivitamin and improving your nutrient status doesn't really tend to equate to long-term health outcomes. It doesn't improve all-cause mortality. It doesn't prevent disease. It doesn't, it just doesn't turn into anything. And again, outside of vitamin D, B12, and vitamin C. Now, there are specific cases like bariatric surgery where people aren't really eating any food, where we see
Right.
the use of multivitamins until they're past that post-operative stage where they actually start to intake food again. That multivitamins do tend to be of a benefit, but again, it's a short-term, small effect type of thing for a specific population. So people ask me all the time, should I take a multivitamin? Like, you can. It's not going to hurt anything, but you're probably not doing much to help.
Hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Chalk that up for my mind blown.
There you go. All right. So one more thing here regarding our micronutrients, we have something called the adequate intake. Now, the RDA and RDI are, again, this whole sentence, two sentences over here. When we cannot establish an RDA for something, and some good examples of this would be fiber and infant formulas. So we don't really have good information on how much vitamins and minerals and stuff infants need. So we have like children, maybe 3 to 5, and we have these different life stages. We kind of have some good information on vitamins and minerals for those stages, but like infants, we kind of don't know. So we have these adequate intakes, right? So it's like, we find this amount to be adequate. We don't really have a recommendation, but if you get this much of it, it seems to be okay. And the same thing for fiber. We don't have specific recommendations for that. We just have like, try to get this much. That seems to be adequate. All right. And again, those are um, based on averages. All right, so that's it for our micronutrients. Don't worry too much about your micronutrient, folks.
Good to know.
Nutrition. Yeah, nutrition periodization. Okay, so this periodization is a big fancy word that just means phases. And last time, maybe the time before, I said fat loss is a phase, not a lifestyle. And so
Right.
that's all it means, is that we are putting your goals into phases. Okay. So you don't spend too much time focusing on one specific thing. And that allows you to build a plan that is sustainable, that allows you to reach your goals over time. The easiest way to think about this is to think of this compared to sports. Sports have seasons, right? Football is not 12 months long. The season is not 12 months long. Those athletes don't even play football 12 months out of the year, right?
Right.
So we have a preseason, we have an in-season, a postseason, and an off-season. All right. So when we think about preseason, what are football players, baseball players, hockey players, what are they all doing during the preseason? They are
working on their nutrition, starting to exercise, starting to trim their bodies up, increase their stamina, duration,
yeah.
skill sets.
They go to preseason camp and they start
Yep.
working on all of the things that are going to be needed for the
Right.
in-season.
Right.
All right. So
Right.
when we think about a diet plan, this is going to be looking at incorporating habits like tracking. So you'll start tracking your food, you'll start tracking your weight, getting used to building the habit of doing those things on a daily basis. You're going to start looking at food labels, right? You're going to start tracking your calories. Going to start getting in the habit of weighing and measuring food. Most people just eyeball stuff. How much oatmeal did you have? I had about a cup. Okay, well, measure it out. And you're going to start transitioning your daily activity for in-season purposes. So once you start working on your specific goal, be it fat loss or be it muscle gain, that in-season activity, so the exercise that you're doing is going to be a little bit different than something that you would be doing in the off season, for example. All right. So Preseason, I generally like to coach people on that for about 1 to 2 months. We're not looking on making changes to your body or anything, right? We're just getting in the habit, or we're looking at ingraining these habits, getting you better prepared to do all of those things to make the most of this in-season time. Okay. So when we go in season, this is generally about 3 to 4 months long for most of my clients here. So this is where we're actively trying to lose fat or gain muscle. Okay. And so this is when we actually put that calorie deficit or calorie surplus into action. We manipulate those macros around. We start manipulating your exercise activity. So maybe we bring cardio up and we bring the weightlifting down, or vice versa, whatever it may be. But this is the actual phase where we want to see changes happening, right? So we're looking for changes on the scale to happen. We're looking for changes in body composition to happen. 3 to 4 months long. Now, most people are looking to lose body fat, right? So a good general rule of thumb here is to lose 1 to 2% of your body weight per week, and a total of 10 to 15% body weight. All right. So that means if you were losing, let's say you weigh 200 pounds, and we're going to lose 1% of your body weight per week. That's 2 pounds. Over the course of 10 weeks, that would be 20 pounds total. All right. So now we have specific metrics by which we know we have targets that we know we need to meet. Okay. So 2 pounds per week is our estimated weight loss here for a total of 20 pounds. So that allows us to know whether or not we need to make changes during this in-season plan. Okay, so the first week, let's say we put somebody on a diet and they lose 4 pounds. The next week they lose 2 pounds. The next week they lose 1 pound. All right, so we're at a total of 7 pounds over 3 weeks. Our goal is 2 pounds per week, which would be 6 pounds. Now that by the time if somebody was doing this on their own, by the time they get to that 1 pound weight loss, they think that they've done something wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do the people start doing? They start making changes. However, we have our targets that we know we need to meet, and we know that we are actually ahead of target.
Right.
Do we make changes at that point? No, we don't do anything at that point. We're ahead of target, right?
Right.
So by having all of these metrics, having a plan of action, that allows you to know when to make changes and then what changes to make. Okay.
Right. Right.
All right. Next up, we have our post-season. So this is when we start ramping down activity. Okay. So let's say we increase the buttload of cardio for this fat loss phase. We're going to start ramping that down. Cardio will still kind of stay a little bit high, but we're going to start bringing it down a little bit. We might start bringing the weightlifting up a little bit, maybe not, depending on how someone's feeling. So as you go through a diet, even as you go through a bulk and you're trying to gain muscle, you can build up some fatigue, some diet fatigue from this. And so what we're looking to do during this postseason is to allow that fatigue to dissipate and come off, and kind of work towards getting stuff back towards a normal, what we might consider a normal daily activity and daily eating plan. Okay. We're increasing or decreasing our calories and macros to our maintenance levels. So I like to do this slowly over time, about 100 calories a week or so, working on building that back up. So if we cut a bunch of calories out of somebody's diet, we're going to look to start adding calories back in. We would slowly add those 1 week at a time until we start to see the weight on the scale go back up. Once the weight on the scale comes up, it bumps up a pound or two, we stop adding calories at that point. Right?
Right.
And this process generally about a month to 2 months, depending on how long everything was. And then we have our off season. And this is when we can think about off season is generally like where you're going to spend the majority of your time. This is your maintenance calories. So we're not looking to lose weight. We're not looking to gain weight. We're looking to maintain whatever it was that we gained during our in-season phase. Okay. So if we lost a bunch of fat, you lost 20 pounds for this 10 weeks, we're looking for you to maintain that 20-pound weight loss over the course of 4 to 7 months. Okay. And this is going to allow you to adjust to your new calorie intakes, this new food intake. It's going to allow you to adjust to a new body fat set point. It's also going to allow you to adjust to this new way that you look in the mirror. Okay. Because if you lose a lot of weight or you gain a lot of weight pretty rapidly, especially if you go on a cut and you lose a whole bunch of weight and then you immediately jump into a bulk and you gain a whole bunch of weight, that can psychologically have an effect on people. Um, so we're looking on that. We might be working on skill building. Okay. So maybe there's something that you got into while we were doing this in-season thing. Maybe you enjoyed running and you're like, hey, you know what? I maybe would like to do a 5K or a 10K or something. So we're going to work on some running skills. Maybe you want to get into powerlifting. We're going to work on some of the skill requirements for you to lift heavy weights, right? Or maybe we'll be bringing up weak points. So you've gone through this fat loss phase or you've gone through this bulk phase, and we see that, maybe your triceps don't quite look the way you want them to, or maybe your calves are lacking. So this is a time where we work on that stuff. But this is generally what we would call maintenance. It'd be about 4 to 7 months long. There are people out there who spend less time than that. I think it really depends on where you are, where you're starting, and how far into your journey you are. So the closer you get to your goal, the shorter all of these things can be. So like an active fat loss phase for somebody who's already 10% is not going to be that long. All right. And so they can spend less time in maintenance after that as well to go into another fat loss phase sooner than, say, somebody who has 120 pounds of fat to lose. All right. You're going to spend more time in that fat loss phase. We were trying to get a bunch of it off, and then we want to spend more time in a maintenance phase, so that your body's trying to fight back after you lose a bunch of weight. Your body doesn't like to change. It's trying to get back to homeostasis. Okay. So we want to give it time to develop a new homeostasis, right? So the new normal is now 20 pounds lighter. All right. So the next time we go to diet, it's 20 pounds of weight loss rather than 40 pounds. Your brain isn't trying to fight 40 pounds of weight loss, is trying to fight 20 pounds of weight loss. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, man. So that is it.
I have a
for
question.
that. Yeah.
So looking at what we just talked about, how does that, or does that apply to, let's just say, what are those gyms? The guys that are just doing this stuff full time, all the time. I mean, it's almost a lifestyle to them, but it's such an
Mhm.
aggressive workout, such an aggressive nutrition plan, and they do it all the time. I mean, what's the healthy component to that? I equate that to like, somebody who's playing baseball at a high level or football
Mhm.
at a high level, and then in off season, instead of taking off season and doing like we just talked about, postseason, off season, then they go play like in a different country, or so basically they're playing. Or let's put it this way: what about like elite, young athletes playing baseball year round? Nutrition wise, exercise wise, high aggressive. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a
So,
health issue, there's a health point there to be made, I think.
yeah. So
CrossFit.
high CrossFit. Yeah. So high level athleticism, elite, elite athletes, um, is, is, just about as unhealthy as sitting on the couch and eating potato chips. Okay.
Right. Yes.
These guys, so you look at the average retirement age of professional athletes, it's quite young. All right.
Yeah.
These guys aren't retiring in their 60s and 70s. They're retiring in their 30s and 40s.
Right.
Sometimes you'll have a comeback. They don't last very long.
Right.
Um, they are wearing themselves out. They're beating themselves up. And then if you watch documentaries or you follow any of these guys who will do interviews after they've retired and stuff, most of their focus from that point on is just kind of like trying to um keep their body from hurting and deteriorating any farther than what they did. So high level athleticism. So first of all, we're talking about a very small subset of the population that is
An elite
genetically
group.
capable, yeah,
Right.
genetically capable of performing at that level.
Right. Right.
Not every single person. So I'm not the strongest person on earth. Um, However, based on the weight lifted, for body weight, like I am in an elite level. And I will say that, you know, having worked up to what I did, like there was a point, like I had to stop because it was just constant nagging issues all the time. And I don't think that I reached my peak by any means, but I couldn't couldn't do it anymore.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
yeah, so trying to drive for that high level athleticism all the time um is not healthy. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and my point also being there is not just in the physical, the workout, and the muscular
uh
degeneration, and just the brutality on your body. Although it may not seem brutal, but it kind of is. The nutrition as well. One of the things that you taught me was because I would tell, for those of you who don't know, I'd ask Coach Lamby, I'm like, man, how come I want to look like Thor, on
mm,
on the marble, and he coached me, he told me, okay, you know what? They don't look like that all the time.
yeah.
And so you go into a deficiency there to shred and to shred, and just to get down to like a, and if you really search, you'll find these guys when they talk about it, they say, and Coach Lamby's done this, and he says it was miserable
Yeah.
to
It's
shred
horrible.
down to that. So this is all about phases. It's all about
Yeah.
phases.
Yeah. And that's a good point. You're talking about peak athleticism or getting really, really cutting in shape for a movie role. So when somebody like what's his name? Anyway, Thor, Chris Hemsworth,
Yeah.
right? So as he gets in shape for this role, and he's dieting for a specific look and everything is planned towards one specific day. They're going to have a shirtless scene on one
Right.
specific day, and
Right.
everything is geared towards moving towards that one specific day so that he looks his best on that one specific day. That doesn't mean that that's absolutely the healthiest that he's ever been in his life,
Right.
or necessarily that he feels the greatest. And a lot of them will tell you, you watch interviews,
Yes.
they absolutely hate doing it. I went through my first fat loss phase. It wasn't too bad. And then I did the point where I was like, well, I'm going to try and get under 10% body fat. And it was miserable. You're tired all the time. You're lethargic. You're grumpy. You feel like junk. You look
Yep.
fantastic, but
Yep.
you know,
Yep. Yep.
that's that. So yeah. And the same for being at a peak level of athleticism and the nutrition that goes along with it. A lot of women that compete at that top level, especially in CrossFit, many of them don't experience a menstrual cycle. Okay.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it takes some time for them to get that back. They have to reduce their amount of activity. They have to change their diet plans. Um, so that's part of that. A lot of the men have uh, way below physiologically normal testosterone levels. So many of them have to use testosterone. It's quite rampant throughout many sports.
Right, right,
high level sports.
right, right,
And so that goes to the efficacy of this nutrition periodization here. Why do we have an in season for nutrition, right? Why do we have an in season for sports? You can't maintain a peak forever. It's called a
right,
peak for a reason,
right, right,
right?
right,
It gets to the top and then it has to come back down.
right.
So that goes to the efficacy of this,
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
also how we play sports, how we do all of that stuff. Powerlifting competitions, when we were lifting back in Texas, every winter was when I would look to do my peaks.
Yep,
The rest of the year, I just spent working on technique or continuing to build strength or just developing that stuff. And there's only one time per year where I would actually try and go for my max lift.
yep,
So
yep.
generally in the wintertime, because you're eating a lot anyway. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well,
you're fueling that performance.
those are my biggest lifts were in the wintertime.
Yeah,
I thought,
yeah.
so why because just because we're locked in this cold building, I was like, no, I'm teasing. I'm teasing. I'm teasing. No, that's what I agree. That's when all the big lifts happen. So
Mm,
yeah.
yep.
And summertime, it was like summertimes were like definitely
Yeah,
off season.
you're just trying not to die from the heat.
Right. Yes. Yes. At least in
Yeah.
Texas for sure.
Yep. Summertime in Texas was our off season. That's for sure. We
That's the line.
weren't, it was just about coming in, just greasing the groove.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I generally tended to cut the reps and the volumes down quite a bit.
Yep. Yep.
And it was
Yep.
just kind of like, just come in, just squat, just deadlift, do that stuff. And let's get out of here and try not to die from heat stroke. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. Very cool. Good
All right.
stuff.
That is it for our nutrition basics. We got a nice little mind map here going. So I hadn't planned on this being quite what it is, but I think this is actually a pretty good little reference here for anybody to have. So this will be as a PDF in the show notes. Of course, linked to in the Google Drive because I can't put this on the show notes for anything. But yeah, so you guys can have this, and I'm actually pretty happy with the way this came out.
Awesome. Awesome. Good stuff, man.
All
Good stuff.
right, yeah.
So before you even ask me,
Okay,
my mind blown was on not having to meet all those recommended daily requirements on vitamins and doing the
yeah,
multivitamin thing because I'll be honest, I've been in that mindset on the multivitamin thing now for about I don't know a month and a half, 2 months now. I've been taking a multivitamin every night, every day,
hmm,
and just and I read that like nationwide, at least in the United States and pretty much globally, I guess as well, but so common deficiencies are like iron, which is actually a mineral, vitamin A, sometimes vitamin D, and a couple of other minerals. But so I'm like, oh yeah, I want to make sure I'm up on all of that.
hmm,
And so I've been doing the multivitamin thing. But what we're finding out is that you don't have to meet that number every day.
yeah,
It blows my mind.
yep. If you're using something like Chronometer,
Yep.
Macrofactor, MyFitnessPal, or something,
Yep.
they'll generally give you kind of a percentage estimate of where you're hitting for your daily value on all of that stuff. And so I think if you're 80% above, and you're not eating the same thing every stinking day, probably just fine. Um, there's certain cases where people need to focus more on something. So premenopausal women who have heavy menses probably need to focus on getting a little more iron in their diet. Um, and that's where I recommend red meat. It's a high iron, it's highly bioavailable, easily digestible, and it seems to work pretty well for women in that circumstance. So,
Right.
there are cases where people need to worry about some things more than others at certain times, but for the majority of people, not so much. Just try to eat
Yep.
a varied diet and, yeah, don't worry about it too much.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
vitamin D in the wintertime, I'd probably say. Vitamin D and B12, I think everyone can probably benefit from taking that. Even 40% of omnivorous eaters are what's it called? Marginally deficient in B12.
Marginally. Yep.
Yeah. So vitamin D and B12 probably okay for everybody to take.
Cool. Good deal.
All right, man. Mind blown. All right. Hope you guys out there get something from this. Take advantage of that PDF. I think it's actually a pretty decent resource. And we will see you guys next time. Coach Lamby and Dwayne out.
See you guys.